Pull up your last paycheck. Now imagine handing 84 cents of every dollar to 6 specific places before you ever see it. That's what's happening to the average person between 25 and 64 right now, whether they realize it or not. The Bureau of Labor Statistics just released their latest numbers, and the breakdown is worse than most people think. 6 categories. Most people guess wrong about which one is number 1. Today we're going to walk through every single one, show you exactly how you stack up against the national average, and expose the hidden mechanism inside each category that makes them grow faster than your income ever could. Meet Eric. Eric is 39. He's married, he's got 2 kids, he works a normal job, he earns a normal income. He is, statistically, the most average person in America right now. And we're going to use Eric throughout this video as your benchmark. Every number you see attached to Eric is the actual national average for someone in your bracket, pulled straight from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm Professor Wealth, and on this channel we actually run the numbers. That's what we're going to do here. No vibes. No vague advice about cutting your morning coffee. Just the data and what the data actually means for you. Here's what the BLS does. Every year they track exactly where American households spend their money. 14 major categories. And in the latest data release, the total annual spending for the average household came out to $78,535. That's about $6,500 a month. For people right in the middle of their careers between 35 and 54, that number is closer to $8,000 a month. But here's the part nobody talks about. Out of those 14 categories, just 6 of them account for 84% of where the money goes. 6. That's it. The other 8 categories combined are noise. So we're going to go through these 6 from the smallest to the largest. And before we start, I want you to do something. Take a guess right now at which one is number 1. Write it down. Most people get this wrong, even though it sounds like it should be obvious. We'll check at the end. One last thing, this video isn't about telling you to cut your lattes, it's about showing you the machine. Because once you can see how each category is built to grow with your income, you can start making decisions about it. Until then, you're just along for the ride. First category, entertainment. Eric spends about $300 a month here. That's 4.6% of his total budget. It's the smallest of the 6 categories we're going to look at today. And here's what's interesting about entertainment. It's the smallest category by a long way, but it gets more personal finance attention than any of the other 5 combined. Every budgeting video on YouTube wants to talk about your streaming subscriptions. Every finance influencer wants you to cancel Netflix, and there's a reason for that. It's the easiest category to cut because nobody really fights you when you cancel a streaming service. There's no contract, no penalty, no real consequence. But let's look at what's actually happening inside this category because there's a real trap here. Streaming services. The average American household now pays $52 a month for streaming, up from $42 a year ago. That's a 22% jump in 1 year. Cable, for the household still paying for it, runs about $101 a month. Mobile plans, $58. Home internet, $68. Add those up, and the average household is now paying close to $280 a month just to stay connected and entertained. So if Eric cut his entertainment spending in half, he'd save about $1,800 a year. That's real money. Hold on to that number, $1,800 a year. We're going to come back to it when we get to category number 6, because I want to show you something. And one more thing, because this matters. Entertainment is the category that makes the rest of the work worth doing. Cut this one to 0 and you've optimized your life for a version of yourself nobody actually wants to be. The goal isn't to eliminate this category, the goal is to know what's in it. Category 2, healthcare. Eric spends $517 a month here, just under 8% of his budget. Across the full year, that's about $6,200. Now that number sounds reasonable. That's the number you see in every news article that quotes BLS data. But it's misleading, and I want to show you why. That $6,200 is what Eric pays out of his own pocket. His insurance premium contribution, his co-pays, his deductibles, his prescriptions. What it doesn't include is what Eric's employer pays on his behalf. And for a family plan in the United States right now, the average employer pays around $19,000 a year on top of what the employee pays. So Eric's real healthcare cost, the actual total being spent to keep his family insured, is closer to $25,000 a year. He just doesn't see most of it. And this is the hidden mechanism in healthcare. The employer-paid portion of your insurance is invisible compensation. It's money your employer is spending on you that never appears on your paycheck, which is one of the reasons wages in this country have grown so much slower than total compensation for the last 2 decades. Your employer is paying you more. You're just being paid in insurance you didn't ask for. Now, what can Eric actually do about this? Honestly, less than you'd think. The big lever in healthcare is choosing the right insurance plan for your actual usage pattern. If Eric and his family rarely use the doctor, a high deductible plan paired with a health savings account can be a powerful combination because the HSA gives you a triple tax advantage. Money goes in pre-tax, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free for medical expenses. It's one of the few accounts in the entire tax code that's structured that way. If you qualify for one, it's worth understanding. And to be fair, this is the one category on our list where spending more can genuinely be the right answer. Buying the wrong insurance to save a few dollars a month is how people end up bankrupt over a single hospital visit. The trap in healthcare isn't spending too much, it's spending it in the wrong place. Category 3. Food. Eric spends about $840 a month feeding his family. 12.9% of his total budget. That breaks down to roughly $500 at the grocery store and $340 at restaurants and on delivery apps. And here's where the real story is. It's not the groceries. The food at home line in the BLS data has grown roughly in line with general inflation for the last 15 years. The line that's exploded is food away from home. It's grown about 3 times faster than groceries since 2010. Why? 2 reasons: convenience pricing and delivery app markups. Let's look at what actually happens when Eric orders a $14 lunch on a delivery app. The restaurant marks the menu up by about 15% for delivery customers, so that $14 is already closer to $16. Then the app adds a delivery fee, usually $3 to $5. Then a service fee, usually 15% of the order. Then tax. Then tip, because the driver still needs to get paid. By the time that $14 lunch lands on Eric's desk, he's paid $22 for it. That's a 57% surcharge. And most of it is invisible at the moment he's clicking the button. Now, let's do the math the way we always do it here. Eric eats out about 8 times a week, including lunches at the office. If he swaps just 3 of those 8 meals for something he makes at home, he saves around $2,400 a year. Invest that difference at a 7% real return for 20 years, and Eric is sitting on roughly $98,000 in additional wealth, from 3 sandwiches a week. To be honest about this category, though, there's a real trade-off here that the personal finance world likes to ignore. If both partners work full-time and there are kids in the house, the time it takes to cook from scratch every night isn't free. Sometimes the $22 lunch is the right answer because the alternative is 45 minutes of your life you don't have. The point isn't to eliminate convenience, it's to know what convenience is costing you. Category 4, and this is the one nobody talks about: personal insurance and pensions. Eric spends $818 a month here, 12.5% of his budget, nearly $10,000 a year. Here's why I said nobody talks about it. Holy Schmidt's video on retiree spending didn't mention this category because retirees mostly aren't contributing to it anymore. Most budgeting apps lump it into something called Other. Most personal finance videos skip right over it. But if you're in your 30s or 40s, this is the 4th largest line on your spending sheet. Bigger than your healthcare, bigger than your entertainment, bigger than every category we've covered so far. So what's actually in it? Your 401k contributions, your IRA contributions, your Social Security tax, your life insurance premiums, your pension contributions if you're one of the people who still has one. All of the money flowing out of your paycheck into accounts that are technically yours, but that you don't see day to day. And here's the part that makes this category completely different from every other one on this list. Every other category we're going to look at has an industry behind it that's spending billions of dollars to make you spend more. Housing has realtors, mortgage lenders, and home improvement chains. Transportation has dealerships, auto lenders, and insurance companies running ads on every channel you watch. Food has delivery apps and grocery loyalty programs designed to increase the size of your basket. Entertainment has streaming services, A/B, testing their cancellation flows to keep you subscribed. This category has none of that. No business profits when you contribute more to your 401k. No app sends you a push notification when you haven't increased your contribution rate this year. No one calls you to ask if you'd like to max out your IRA. This is the only category on this entire list where the system is actually rigged in your favor through employer match, through tax deferral, through automatic payroll deduction. And because of that, it's the only one you have to actively grow yourself. There's no machinery doing it for you. Let's see what happens when Eric does grow it. Right now, this category is 12.5% of his spending. Let's say he reallocates from somewhere else and pushes it to 18%. That's roughly an extra $4,500 a year going into retirement accounts. At a 7% real return over 20 years, that single change adds about $185,000 to his retirement balance from one number on a payroll form. To be fair, this isn't always the right move. If you're carrying high-interest debt, particularly credit card debt above 10 or 15%, paying that down first usually beats the math on retirement contributions. But for most people who are not in that situation, this is the single highest leverage category on the entire list, and almost nobody treats it that way. Category 5. Transportation. Eric spends $1,110 a month getting around, 17% of his budget. $13,300 a year. And the first thing I want to clear up is what's actually in this number. Most people think transportation means the car payment. It doesn't. Transportation is 6 things stacked on top of each other: the loan or lease payment, the insurance, the fuel, the maintenance, the registration, and the depreciation that's hitting your asset value whether you notice it or not. The car payment is just the part you see. Now here's the hidden mechanism in transportation, and it's the most elegant trap of all the 6 categories. The auto industry figured out a long time ago that people don't shop for cars based on price. They shop based on monthly payment. So when prices started rising faster than wages, the industry didn't lower prices. They lengthened the loan. 20 years ago, the standard auto loan was 60 months. 5 years. Today, the most common auto loan is 72 months, 6 years. And 84-month loans, that's 7 years, are now common enough that almost every major lender offers them. Some are stretching to 96 months. Eric, in our example, is on a 72-month loan for a $42,000 SUV at a 7% interest rate. Over the life of that loan, he'll pay about $9,500 in interest. Almost $10,000 on top of the sticker price, just for the privilege of stretching the payments out. And by the time he's done paying it off, the SUV is worth less than half of what he paid for it. He'll likely roll the negative equity into his next loan. Let's look at what an alternative version of Eric could do. Instead of the new SUV, Eric buys a 3-year-old used vehicle for cash or with a much smaller loan. His all-in transportation cost, including insurance, fuel, and maintenance, runs about $400 a month instead of $1,110. That's a difference of $710 a month. Invested at a 7% real return over 20 years, that gap turns into roughly $370,000. To be fair, this isn't a universal answer. If you live somewhere without good public transit and you commute long distances, transportation is mostly inelastic. You need a car, and you need it to be reliable. The trap isn't having a car. The trap is buying new and big when used, and right-sized would do exactly the same job. Which brings us to the biggest category of them all. The biggest line on Eric's spending sheet by a wide margin. Housing. If you guessed housing at the start of this video, you got it right. Most people do. But here's the part most people get wrong. They guess housing for the wrong reason. They assume it's number 1 because houses are expensive. And that's sort of true. But that's not why this category dominates the list. The reason housing is number 1 is structural, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with the number. Eric spends $2,189 a month on housing. That's 33.4% of his total spending. Annualized, that's $26,266 a year. 1 out of every $3 Eric earns goes here before anything else. And here's the hidden mechanism. Housing is the only category on this entire list that automatically scales with the size of your raise. Let me walk you through it. Eric gets a promotion. His income goes up by 15%. He starts thinking he can afford a bigger house. His mortgage lender agrees because they qualify him based on his new income. So Eric buys a bigger house. The mortgage is bigger, the property tax, which is a percentage of the home's value, scales up automatically. The homeowner's insurance, which is also tied to the home's value, scales up automatically. The utility bills, because the house has more square footage to heat, cool, and light, scale up. The maintenance, because there's more roof, more siding, more plumbing, scales up. Even the furnishings cost more because there are more rooms to fill. Every single input upgrades together. And once Eric signs that mortgage, those costs are locked in for 15 to 30 years. That's why this category is number one. Not because housing is expensive in some abstract sense, because it's the only category designed to permanently absorb every raise you ever get. So let's run the real math on this one, because this is the big one. Imagine Eric, instead of upgrading his house every time his income went up, kept his housing cost flat for 20 years. Same house, same payment, same neighborhood. Every time he got a raise, the additional income went into investments instead of into a bigger mortgage. Over 20 years at a 7% real return, the difference between Eric's real path and the flat housing path comes out to roughly $620,000 in additional retirement wealth from one decision: not moving. Now remember that $1,800 a year I mentioned in the entertainment section? The savings you'd get from cutting your streaming subscriptions in half? Reallocating just 5% of your housing budget gets you the exact same $1,800 a year. And you don't have to give up a single show you actually enjoy. That's the leverage difference between these categories. Cutting entertainment is loud and visible. Cutting housing is quiet and invisible. The one nobody notices is the one that matters. Quick favor, by the way. If this video is making you see your spending differently, hit the like button. It's the single biggest thing that helps the channel reach other people who need to see this. To be fair to housing, owning a home does build equity, and renting in a major metro can absolutely cost more than a mortgage, even with all the maintenance and tax included. The trap isn't spending on housing. Everyone has to live somewhere. The trap is upgrading the house every time income goes up. The first house is shelter. The third house is lifestyle inflation wearing a costume. So that's the full list. Entertainment at 4.6%. Healthcare at 7.9%. Food at 12.9%. Personal insurance and pensions at 12.5%. Transportation at 17%. Housing at 33.4%. Together, those 6 categories are 84% of where Eric's money goes. And if your income is anywhere close to the national average, they're where your money is going too. Here's the takeaway I want you to leave with. These 6 categories aren't bad. They're predictable. And predictable is good because predictable is something you can plan around. The problem isn't that you spend money in these places. The problem is that almost every one of them is designed to grow faster than your income, and most people never see the design until they're already trapped inside it. Most personal finance content tells you to cut your entertainment. Cancel the streaming services. Skip the coffee. We just showed you the math on why the real game is somewhere else entirely. It's in housing, where every upgrade locks you in for 30 years. It's in transportation, where 72-month loans are quietly draining your wealth. And it's in the one category that nobody talks about, personal insurance and pensions, the only line on your spending sheet that actually builds wealth instead of consuming it. Those 3 categories alone are 63% of where your money lives. That's where the leverage is. Everything else is rounding error. So here's your homework. Pull up your last 3 months of spending. Add up your percentages by category. Compare them to Eric's. Wherever the gap is largest, that's your map for the next 12 months. You don't need a budget, you need to see the machine. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, the next video on this channel is going to look at one of the most controversial questions in personal finance right now, which is whether you should actually be paying extra on your mortgage. Most people assume the answer is obviously yes. The math says something different. I'll link that one as soon as it's up. In the meantime, if this video helped you see your money differently, the best thing you can do is share it with one person who needs to see it too. Probably someone in their 30s or 40s who keeps wondering why their raises don't seem to be making it any easier. I'm Professor Wealth, and this is Wealth Logic. We'll see you in the next one.